We found the owner of that ticket. Excellent. So we're here to talk about the future of conversational AI, and it is truly exciting. Nobody can deny the hype that is around at the moment around conversational engagement. Okay, and the time is now, right? We've started on the journey already, and the time is now to really push this forward. So it's truly exciting as a consumer that we will be able to engage with our service providers in a conversational manner in the future. We will be able to ask them for whatever we want, whenever we want, and get a response immediately. At the moment, we have to use convoluted apps and convoluted websites in order to get our jobs done. Even at Black Sheep Coffee this morning, it took me 11 clicks to order 2 coffees. Right? Where I could have gone up to the lady and said, hey, or the barista, and said, please could I have a cappuccino and a latte? Click with my phone and away we go. The experience that we're providing for the consumers isn't great, even though it's automated. Conversational will allow automation of that experience in real time and deliver great experience. So, and from a business perspective, it's super cool because you will engage in conversation with your customers and you will take insight from that conversation and you'll be able to use it in your products and you'll be able to improve CSAT and you'll be able to improve your products and your services to your customers. So there are huge benefits to both consumers and the business of conversational engagement. It's super exciting, but of course it comes with challenges. So challenges, it needs a really unique and quality broad engagement layer to manage the conversation. This engagement layer, as soon as you open it up to the consumers, will need to not just cover your service channel, it will need to cover your sales channel and your marketing channel and any other channels you might have. Because once the conversation is good, the consumer will start engaging and asking more and more questions to get the answers that they want. It also needs to cover lots of processes and workflow enhancements at in the back end, so that you can deliver those automated services really well. And that is something, again, that's a transformation activity that will go on over time. But the projects and the products are there in order to do that. And finally, the technology. The technology exists today, but it's still unproven in many aspects, and that's what we're going to be discussing today predominantly, as to how to leverage the technology to move in the right way, deliver the right experiences for the right transactions, but in a compliant, auditable, and risk-free way for you as a business. So it's truly exciting. I'm very excited about it. The customers you're going to listen to today are already on that journey and delivering these things. They're advanced and they're doing super exciting things. So really excited to be listening to them today as well. So you can tell how excited I am.
Yeah.
Cherie, what are you excited about today?
Well, I guess I'm excited to take you on a bit of a journey. So you may not realize it, but to get to your seats today, you've already traveled back in time around 260 years. So you walked on Victorian cobble street that was last open to the air before 1754. And when this building was constructed and completed around about that time, it was done so for the Royal Society of Arts, which was a group of people, around 11 people, who came together and felt that they should pool together a subscription of monies that was going to be invested in initiatives for social good. And they did a lot of really cool things. So they planted over 60 million trees. They funded initiatives that otherwise would not have been profitable, so nobody really was interested, right? But they did really great things. They founded, or they identified plants and minerals that opened up entirely new industries. And they even managed schemes to remedy social ills, such as the use of children in cleaning the chimney sweeps or the chimneys. And they did that through finding technology alternatives. They even let women vote on some of these ideas. So when we at Boost look to create solutions for our customers, what we are looking for is to consider what's come before us, to deliver 100% now, in the time now, and then also remain 10 steps ahead for what is needed in the future, for all our futures. Because AI is a powerful tool, just like this house was for the members of the RSA, so that they could further their vision. So that is what you're going to hear today. And so traveling from the 1700s back to now and beyond, you're going to meet with our Chief Customer Officer, our co-founder, Henry Iverson. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I don't know if anybody else is hearing that. No? A little bit, yeah. As well as Rasmus Hawk, who is our Chief Technology Officer. And they're going to take you through what responsible AI means to us. Then you're going to hear from some of our customers. So you've got Aegeus, Metrobank, and Trig. They will be talking about the power of conversational AI and the different things you might want to look out for in a vendor or even in a use case. Then you're going to hear from Santander, who's been a customer of ours for about 7 years. And they, through thorough testing, are looking or preparing to put a customer-facing generative AI solution into their customer experience for next year. And then, finally, last but not least, you'll hear from Tour Radar, who has almost built their entire customer experience on generative AI. So quite a lot to go through and a bit of that journey. So really, the future is now. The future is here. It's been well thought out, expertly delivered, and then also planned for the future, built on solid ground that will last more than another 260 years. And the future of customer and employee experience is Boost AI. Thank you for coming.
Henry?
Yep. So I'm going to welcome Henry and Rasmus.
Good morning. We have the pleasure to talk about responsible AI this morning. Who's excited about the theme? Raise your hand. Some people. Hopefully we can get the rest of you excited. I spoke with my mother yesterday, and she asked me, okay, what are you going to do in London? And I told her, I'm going to have a speak on responsible AI. And she was really, really excited, like, Henry, you're doing a speech on responsible? She didn't care about the AI part at all. So let's get to it. I have the pleasure of having Rasmus on stage. He has been working with responsible AI for many years. I work a lot with the big strategic accounts, so I help them make the most out of technology, where responsible AI is definitely a key part of it. But I will let you introduce yourself, Rasmus.
Yes, hello everybody, my name is Rasmus, I'm the CTO for Boost, and very happy to be here today. So basically, my background is working many years in responsible AI, so I worked I was part of the EU AI Act and defining that, and later on defining the ISO 42001, which is related to AI risk management as well. So I have a long background working in that system, and also working with all of the engineers and wonderful people in Boost and the engineering team to sort of develop the platform going forward. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, good. And I think everything we do in Boost is very focused on taking responsibility into account when we develop the organization, the processes, the people, and how we deliver the projects. And I think also responsible AI is getting actually more traction now than it did before. I think there's definitely some reasons for that. But I think for most industries, especially the regulated ones, the ability to have responsible AI as kind of core when you develop AI is extremely important. Let me see, that was the wrong one. Sorry for starting with a bit heavy slide. I think I just want to show you about all the kind of regulation and policies are coming. So that's kind of a bit the boring part of it. But we obviously need to comply with everything coming. And you also know that the European AI Act is coming now. In the US, we have the AI Bill of Rights. Yep. And there's going to be a lot of policies coming out globally. So there's going to be probably multiple ones you need to kind of comply with. So I think the key thing here is that if you look at what happened with GDPR and everything, I think you're going to see the European AI Act be the same as GDPR was for privacy. You will see the same thing for AI. Because I think our responsibility is to be able to use the technology in a safe and responsible way. I think it's going to be pretty hard to really regulate the technology in itself, because you can use the technology in very different ways. So I think the responsibility is going to be on the vendor, it's going to be for the people actually using the technology. So we need to kind of take actions and responsibility in terms of how we use technology. I think the good thing you can see here on chatbots, is pretty limited risk in that sense. So because you have control in how it responds and how it acts and so on. So we don't see this as kind of the highest risk. There's definitely things within healthcare and other use cases where we would definitely see higher risk though. And then the fines can be pretty high actually. You can actually get like 7% of your annual revenue depending on the size. So that could obviously be millions of pounds in penalty if you don't comply. So that's one part of it. But I think the most important thing, and I think hopefully you can leave why we should care about responsible AI, I think it's much more, sorry, wrong way again, it's around the trust factor. So again, using AI in the right way will have enormous impact on how customers view you. So when they use this technology, are you reviewing their question in an unbiased way? When they have an application for a mortgage or loan or whatever, do we treat them fairly? So there's a lot of components in terms of building that trust. So they really trust it. And I think that's also been some of the challenges early days, especially with the inferior chatbots out there. They didn't understand you. So how can you trust something which doesn't understand you? So I think the understanding part is crucial, but there's so much other elements in terms of building that trust with your customers. And I think also if you look into kind of the future, AI is going to be very dominant on the contact center in all organizations. So building that trust is going to be crucial to be successful. So that's a bit why. Rasmus, maybe you can walk us through kind of what is responsible AI.
Yes.
It's a big theme though, so I would love to kind of get a view on how you see it.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Yeah. So basically, you can say. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So what is responsible AI? Well, I think it makes good sense to sort of divide it up into different, some different dimensions when it comes to responsible AI. And I think one important point here is that it all starts with transparency, right? Because you want to be able to understand what these models are doing and how they are performing, when certain things are triggered, what kind of conversations happened, and also in terms of accountability and in terms of sustainability, you want to get some metrics and collect some metrics for every single conversation that you had out there. So I think the transparency part is really a crucial thing, because without transparency, you don't know whether you are fair, whether you're treating people fairly, and you don't know whether you're accountable or not, and you don't know whether you are regulatory compliant. So I think that's one of the keys here is really the transparency. When it comes to fairness, that's from a legislation perspective, it's more about treating people equally, regardless of their race or gender or anything like that. Which is maybe not that big of a deal in a chatbot scenario or when you're doing a voice conversation, but still there are nuances to that as well. When it comes to accountability, you can say, well, accountability is all about being able to know that these are the kinds of conversations that you want to drive through. These are the kinds of conversations you want to have with your customers. And this is the way that it's carried out. And we're going to go into details with it on a later stage. And then I think the human centricity is also an extremely important part of this. So it's not about, we talk about what we call human in the loop, which is like, well, there needs to be a human that is setting up these conversations, that is perhaps monitoring them, that is perhaps taking configuration changes in the underlying platform to make sure that whatever happens in society in real life is adjusted to that. And we'll get to some examples of that later on as well. Regulatory compliance, obviously, that's a given. Sustainability is also a factor. As you all know, the AI models out there, they have quite a big of impact on the climate. So how can you sort of prevent certain conversations from being done with LLMs, for example, to avoid this excessive use of AI? So that's one of the elements here. So with that said, I think we will dive into some practical key questions.
Yeah, obviously responsible AI is a big topic to cover in 30 minutes.
Yes.
So I think that's the reason we kind of cherry pick kind of 5 kind of main questions to ask yourself. Try to keep it really practical and obviously relate those back to kind of the responsible AI components we just showed you. Again, if you want to have more discussion on this theme, we can obviously be available for that. But I think with that, we want to jump into the first one. And I think this is a question I get a lot. Should you run your virtual agent solely on generative AI capabilities? And I know there's a lot of solutions out there being purely generative AI driven. And I think there's a lot of components to look at in terms of the responsible AI here. Like, obviously, there is an impact on the environment when you run everything on generative AI, but that's obviously consuming more resources. There's also about like the fairness and so on. So there's a lot of components to it. But I think if you kind of look at the marketplace now, and I think we are really good in our space to find new words, new buzzwords. Because, I don't know, who has heard about AI agents here? OK, so like 1/3 of people, yeah. So this is kind of the new now you heard it here, though, first. So you will definitely hear more about that going forward. But I think the idea here is that, OK, what is an AI agent? Is it fully autonomous? Will you have your own generative AI in your company having access to all the necessary information it needs and can execute tasks on behalf of the user? So this is kind of a bit the promise around AI agents. We've been doing this for many years in terms of not only using generative AI, but using a hybrid approach to be able to execute tasks on behalf of customers. AI agents should also be able to speak to each other, and that's also something we do within the government space. So I think, again, coming back to kind of the practical question, but also the recommendation from our side is just kind of look at how can you look at a hybrid approach. So how can you use the best of two worlds? Because generative AI is definitely here to stay. There's no doubt about that. It's causing a lot of disruption in our space. But you also need to kind of use the technology in the right pace. Because I think what we're seeing is that, yes, we definitely want to have agents more autonomous, smarter, being able to handle a conversation in many different turns, which is maybe some of the challenges with the more traditional chatbots. They're really good at understanding a question, but then in terms of handling the conversation further on, could be a bit more challenging. At least a lot of work to kind of build out the journey. But it's also about taking that journey in the right speed. Because again, coming back to the element around trust, we need to trust these virtual agents to do the job before we give them more responsibility. So that's the reason kind of going 100% generative AI is a bit dangerous, I think, in terms of because then you don't really know what you get on the other side. But that's the reason I think most of our customers are obviously traditional been in this space, where you fully control the response and everything. But we're definitely moving over to hybrid, but also some kind of more driven mainly by generative AI. But it's a journey you need to take step by step to kind of build a trust and confidence in the technology as we go forward. But the cool thing, the technology is definitely here. A lot of customers has been using this generative AI technology or hybrid approach for 6 to 8 months. Just going to give you a flavor on kind of what that actually has of business impact. Because we can talk about amazing technology, but what is the implication on the business on this one? So I just kind of picked out a few examples from our customer base. So we had one customer getting 25% decrease in human escalation. So meaning that 25% less calls were handed over to human, which is obviously a very positive sign. We also saw another customer had 50% less unknowns. So they went from accuracy, so ability to understand a question, from 93 to 98%. Then you're kind of getting close to 100%. I don't know how many humans can handle 1,000 of different questions with 98% accuracy. It's getting pretty good. And third point is also maybe a bit surprising now, is the NPS score. Actually seeing that the virtual agent getting a higher NPS score than a human, which I know some people will be like, no, that's not possible. And I think there is some caveat to that number. It's pretty interesting because the NPS score was better on average. But then we also saw we still had some like really good people on customer service. We still outperform the virtual agent for now. How long that will last, we don't really know though. So there's some caveat to that number. But just showing that with AI, you have obviously consistency across the whole contact center. And then we went live with H&M, the big retail, a few weeks back. And they did 50% automation within 1 week, which normally I would take probably a few months before to get to. So that's showing kind of the impact of the hybrid and the generative AI approach.
I think another point also is that once you connect to your backend systems, right? Once you connect to your core banking systems, your core financial, your core insurance systems, then these systems expect sort of some very concrete data to be able to function, right? And you gotta have that sort of bridge between your LLMs and then and the generative part, and then into your core system, and that requires some NLU functionality as well. So I don't think even 5 or 10 years from now we'll still see that this hybrid approach will be something deployed by most of the companies as long as they connect to the backend systems, right? So I think that where LLMs are really good is like FAQ-based responses. So you have some knowledge, right? And then you feed a question and you get an answer. That's great. It still need to be tested and all of that. We'll come to that later. But really, when you connect to your core backend systems, then you need that sort of very static data. And also there's a risk there, right? That the LLMs get it wrong. So with that, let's move into question number 2, which is like, will people try to mess with your solution? And definitely, I mean, what we've seen out there in the market is that the second the customers figured out that this is this is a generative AI they're talking to, then they start to explore, right? Then they say, hey, start talking like a cowboy. What is 2 + 2? And then they kind of do that exploratory journey, right? So that we see an interesting pattern that we see is that the conversations tend to be a lot longer. So the customers are sort of more engaged actually because they're trying out stuff, right? And you can say, that's okay because we have our guardrails and we have everything preventing it. But it is a problem if you're not prepared to sort of protect your assets, because we're also seeing attacks which looks a little bit like this, where you're trying to negotiate the price, for example, right? So this is a famous example where you're basically going in and trying to negotiate the price down, right? And as soon as these kind of messages appear on your website, well then, in some states in the US, well then it's a binding offer, right? So then you're forced into that. So you really want to prevent certain conversations from evolving. So it's not just about like sexually explicit content or stuff like that. It's also about price negotiation, about asking about competitors. So there are certain kinds of information, certain kind of conversations that you don't want to evolve with your channel, whether it's voice or chat, right? Air Canada is another famous example where there was a compensation paid after a customer received inaccurate information. So I think also a very, very famous example. And finally, a delivery example as well. So there are multiple of these things happening in the wild at the moment. And that's why it's important that when you set this up in your own platforms, in your own channels, that you always ensure that there is guardrails, right? So the way Boost AI is sort of approaching this is saying, well, we basically there are a guardian LLM or a guardrail that is monitoring the conversations, right? So what happens is that there's a second LLM that's basically monitoring the conversations between the customer and the AI, and then making sure that nothing bad happens in that, or the conversation don't derail in a specific way. And I think a very important aspect of that is that this is actually a jailbreaking protected or jailbreaking secure and a way of handling it, because it means that when a customer that wants to exploit this is trying to get behind the scenes and see what kind of knowledge were used, what kind of instruction sets were used, well then they can't actually achieve it, because it's always being sort of prevented by this second LLM that is monitoring the conversation. So in case that happens, well then you're redirecting into static responses. You can even in some cases cut off the user completely and just say, hey, please call this phone number or contact us in another way to avoid additional jailbreaking attempts from happening, for example. So that's a typical thing that we do. Also in the platform now, you have the possibility of working with global guardrails. So it means that because one thing that we see in customer organizations that have a lot of AI trainers is that you want to be sure that all of your generative responses are covered. So in that case, you can set up global guardrails that are sort of applied throughout all of conversations, right? So it's a de-risking factor when you're working with this solution. So area number 3, should your customers be testing your bot success? Well, basically, this applies to a lot of different areas in responsible AI, accountability, privacy, security, regulatory compliance, because what we see is that when you set up these conversations, as Henry said, right, it's very quick to set up, right? It's very quick to define the instruction set. It's very quick to define the knowledge, and it's also very quick to start, creating a conversation. But the problem is that you want to be able to test it, right? And if you just do manual testing, there can be a lot of testing done, right? You have to sit there and try, every single kind of combination of different kind of conversations, right? And that can be challenging, right? So really, you don't want your customers to test your own solution. You want to do some testing yourself, right? That's a very important argument there. So really, what we have done in the platform is that end of the year here, we are launching what we call persona-based automated testing. So what that actually means is that you can start to say, for example, well, I'm a 70-year-old weightlifter, and please, generate, 1,000 different questions that I could possibly ask, this particular conversation, and then there's a test automation happening, right? So really, what is done here is that conversations are being automatically tested in the platform to make sure that it still complies with the different or different kinds of conversations that can evolve. Also making sure that certain guardrails are actually triggering when they should be, and sometimes to adjust the instruction sets and the knowledge that you have for that particular AI conversation that you're doing. So really really exciting stuff that we're going to launch here. Which will be a way to ensure these kind of conversations. And I think a really exciting thing about that is also that it provides some sort of proof that these conversations are actually doing what it's supposed to do, right? So persona-based testing is basically that you can set up different personas and then try to do the automation. So number 4, and we only have 5 here, so we could have much more, I think. So really, do we really need humans to supervise the AI? And I think that talks into the human centricity. And I think one of the important parts there is that once you start connecting to your backend systems, right? Once you start to do that, well then there are certain scenarios that you need to look into. For example, it might work really, very nicely now, but what happens if the core backend system is not working in the backend? And you want to be able to create some good strategies for when you are doing this kind of connectivity, and then what happens if you can't connect right? What kind of message do you give to the user? So you need sort of both fallback strategies, and you also need to configure your AI correctly in order for this to work, to avoid things like misunderstandings, poorly coded programs, and so on and so forth, right? So there is a lot of requirements on the humans developing this, because and then the real question is, what kind of person would you want to build your conversations out, right? Do you want that guy, which is kind of like me? I mean, admit it. I'm probably not the best to build these conversations because I don't talk to customers, every single day, right? So really, I think that's a point to take home, is make sure that you enable your customer support personnel and your customer support people to be able to, for them to build out these conversations, for them to do this testing, because they are the ones that are actually, on the front line talking to your customers every single day, right? So I think that's an important element in that. that you want to have the technology available and easy to use, so that you are sort of that you can have your customer support people working with these conversations, rather than some nerdy guy that knows how to code, right? So I think that's an important point. And then finally, which I think is a fantastic story, it's Icelandair that were experiencing a volcano eruption in December 18th of 2023. And what basically happened there was that the volcano erupted around 8 o'clock in the evening, and then suddenly there was like 5,000 people stuck in the airport, right? They had no clue what to do, what hotel do I stay at, what about my connecting flights, so they Icelandair got like a ton of requests in, right? And what the customer support people immediately did was that they put up notices on the chat channels, on the voice channels, saying that if you are impacted by the volcano eruption, this is what you do. And that actually meant that over 90% of all the customer conversations were actually carried out through the bot there. So I think an excellent example of if these kinds of events happen, like political events or disastrous events like this, well then you need to be, as a human, you need to be there to make sure that you account for these scenarios. And I think that's also something that should go into your thinking when you are evolving your customer conversations, is make sure you think about, well, what kind of events can happen and how do I prepare for that? Because there are some excellent tools in the Boost platform that enables you to redirect the customers and to make sure that in events like that the customers are still, they have a good experience out of it, right? So with that, I'll leave it to.
Great. So the last question: how do you comply with regulatory requests? Which is obviously a pretty big one, but I think this illustrated pretty well, though. A lot of people working with AI definitely experience that the AI could be a black box sometimes. Obviously, for order the AI to work, you need to have data. And then you kind of put some data into AI and then really hoping for the best. And that's obviously a bit difficult strategy, because what you really need on this point, especially to be compliant, is how do you kind of show transparency? How do you kind of show the conclusion you came to when you gave that answer and when you gave that mortgage or that quote on the insurance? Those things you definitely need to have visibility in. So I think the data is obviously another discussion in terms of how having data available in the right way. That's also extremely important for the AI. But I think if you look at the way we kind of set up the whole solution, is just to make sure that you have access to all this data. So for every conversation we have with a customer or an employee, you can go in and really dissect that conversation to see kind of where did the virtual agent fetch the information from? Where did they kind of craft the response from? How did it trigger the guardrails? I know this is your baby, so please pitch in if you have any additional comments. So I think that's all the kind of the necessary insights you need to be able to kind of really explain. I think the explainability part is super important. Yes. So how do you explain what actually happened in a conversation? Extremely important.
And by the way, you can also show that explainability directly to the customer by saying, these were the websites where I retrieved that particular information from, and then you can sort of feed that back to the user as well. So there's also an important element in that.
Good. To round off, just emphasizing the point that we are very focused and very serious about responsible AI. I hope you've seen that today. So I think, again, our focus has been obviously to build out all the necessary processes. We are the only vendor in this space having ISO certification on both privacy and security. And again, we are building out. There's also others coming, I know, shortly. So, and if you are obviously dealing with European AI Act, we have a response to that, which we can obviously share with you guys. So we kind of have all the necessary kind of components in order to be, for you guys to be compliant with everything you need. And there's also, in terms of the technical architecture, it's basically built with security by design. So we make sure that there's risk minimization in every step of the way, meaning that the risk for using generative AI in the Boost platform is extremely low.
Yeah. So very briefly, I just want to say, it starts really with your topic-specific conversations, then the ability for you to define the instructions within every single particular topic that you're doing, then the hallucination detection guardrails, then the enterprise guardrails, then the topic-specific guardrails like pricing discussion, competitors, stuff like that, and then the ability to direct that conversation into a specific area, a specific outcome, right? So if it's an insurance claim, well, you want to get to that part where you actually do the insurance claim or don't, but you want to have an outcome of these conversations. Yes.
Good. So those were the questions. Again, there's more questions in our space, so please ask us if you have anything else you want to add to this. And then I will leave it to Rasmus to round off how you see the future on this.
So thank you very much for attending this. And I think, so overall, you can say where are we going in terms of responsible AI? And I think, a very important aspect of this is that you really want to be sure that you have this clear commitment to the societal and ethical responsibilities in order to, when you are developing your systems, and please think about the users behind that. And obviously from a technology perspective, there are also a lot of things happening in this space in terms of responsible AI. So you can be sure that Boost, again, is committed to delivering on these features and making sure that the platform has these capabilities to properly comply with this. So thank you very much, and then I'll hand over to Cherie.